Okay, everyone, thank you all for coming out to our Housing for All campaign. We're really talking about the different visions that we have for housing and how we can use government funding to acquire our housing, how we can use government funding to secure and make sure that our housing is safe. I have amazing folks who are on the ground doing this work, and it has been just a beautiful experience. Why this is so important to me in particular um, is the fact that we know that housing is truly one of the major ways to build generational wealth, to build your wealth, period, to bring up your net worth here in the United States, and to also leave a legacy not only for your community, but obviously for generations to come, for your children, your grandchildren going forward. So it's so important that we acquire our own property. What we see in a lot of communities that are predominantly Black and Brown, we're seeing gentrification, right? We're seeing other people coming in and taking over our homes, taking over our land. And basically, that means that they are taking away our ability to own our communities and to build wealth within our own communities. And we're going to say here in 2024, enough. We're going to buy our blocks back, and here are the different ways that we can actually do that. I am a walking, living testament of using government funding to start your real estate investment journey. Years ago, about 20 years ago or so, I was a high school English teacher up in New Jersey, not making a lot of money. But I knew that I always wanted to get into real estate and purchase my first home. And the way that I was able to acquire and purchase my first home is that I found out that there was a home buying program that was under our administration at the time, the Obama administration. And if you were a teacher, if you were a firefighter, if you were a police officer, you could get home buying assistance if you were going to purchase in the town in which you were working. And so that's what I did. I went and I purchased and I got my down payment taken care of, as well as my closing costs. That property I still own to this day. It has tripled, quadrupled actually in value since the time that I've purchased it. I've been able to get equity out of that home. And from using the equity in that first property that I used government funding to receive, I've now been able to purchase a portfolio of real estate properties up and down the East Coast. But that would not have been possible had I not really realized all the incentives that the government has available to us who are thinking about becoming first-time homebuyers, who are thinking about figuring out ways to invest in real estate. The Biden-Harris administration has lots of programs that we can be using and utilizing to our advantage. And then we know that our current VP, Kamala Harris, and our Democratic national presidential candidate is also has talked about some of the things that she would like to do in terms of making sure that people can afford their homes, including receiving up to $25,000 towards a first-time home buyer purchase. So with that, I wanted to bring in some really awesome folks who are doing this work on the ground, who can give us some more information, some more resources, and can tell us a little bit more about how we can monetize our homes, how we can start thinking about building our wealth, and how we can absolutely start buying back our blocks. So first up, we have Evan Shields, who I'm going to bring him on up to the stage. Hey, Evan, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Can you hear me, Kumara?
I can. We can hear you really well. So thank you
Okay.
so much for being here. So for those of you who don't know, I live now in Miami. So I am a New Yorker. I lived in Jersey for a while. Woo, woo.
Hey, we're glad we brought you down to South Florida.
But now I am here in Florida. I love what's going on here. It's so beautiful. The community is amazing. And so Evan is running for our North Miami Council candidate member. So thank you so much for trying to be a part of the solution. So before we
Of
even get
course.
into housing, let's just talk a little bit about what made you decide to run for candidacy.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, Kumara, thank you so much for organizing this. Housing is the most important economic issue to our state, to our South Florida region, to our county, and especially North Miami. And I just want to thank you for elevating this issue before our community. Listen, I'll keep it brief. North Miami, we're a 70,000 person, amazing, diverse city in North Dade, one of the city of Miami's powerful suburbs. And as much promise as we have as a city, When people look at our town, they see chaos where they need to see competence. And if we're going to tackle affordable housing, if we're going to tackle infrastructure, if we're going to tackle public safety, we have to have competent leaders who are going to have our backs. And that's why I'm running for North Miami City Council. Our election is November 5th. It's an open seat. I would be the first person of color, the first Black person to ever represent my district. I'm a front runner and an underdog at the same time. So we're going to win this thing. We've got a little over 60 days. And I appreciate this opportunity to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is housing, workforce housing, home ownership. If you can just give me 2 minutes, I'll share my very brief story. I mean, yes, I'm a North Miami City Council candidate for District 1. I am also the founder and CEO of Indelible Capital Partners. My firm is on track to invest over $1 billion in workforce housing over the next 10 years across the state of Florida, but not in North Miami, because I don't poop where I eat. I make sure that we have honest leadership, ethics, standards, all that and above. But I'm glad to bring that experience to our city. But before I did anything, like Quamara, I started my career in education. I started my career as a third generation Black teacher in low income schools. I taught on the south side of Atlanta in one of the worst performing high schools at that time. We had an 8% male graduation rate. Wow. That meant that my 9th grade Algebra 1 boys were more likely to be dead or in jail than to go to college. And I became a community organizer on the side on nights and weekends to change that trajectory for my kids. And one of the things I learned that's so important then, that's equally as important now, 10, 12 years later, is affordable housing and having equitable options for everyone. I went back to get my MBA. I did real estate investment banking also in New York, great town, for a couple of years. And then I moved to Miami several years ago, and where my wife and I are deeply invested in our North Miami community. I have led the investment and development of about $4 billion in commercial real estate, mostly affordable housing, every corner of the country. I've helped over 22,000 low-income families and seniors in 16 states, including Florida and South Florida, find quality homes and get quality projects done. That was exactly 1 minute and 50 seconds. So I'm gonna move on to the next piece here. What is at stake right now in our city and in our South Florida region? We've got an affordability crisis that was expanded even during the pandemic. Right now, we have over 150,000 unit deficit of affordable units in Miami-Dade County alone. What we need to do are 3 big things to tackle our housing crisis. OPD. OPD. What does that stand for? Ownership, preservation, and development. I am blessed to have been appointed by our outgoing District 1 North Miami City Councilman Scott Galvin to be chair of our North Miami Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, or AHAC, or Housing Commission, whatever you want to call it. So in this role of leadership, I get a front row seat and get to be a policymaker in our city to figure out, okay, how can we ownership, increase equitable home owner and affordable home ownership. P, preserve existing affordable housing stock in our city and our county. And D, create a smooth pathway for the development of new units. When it comes to ownership, one of the big things is this. 1, we have to keep our people in our own homes. That happens by 1, in our city, our community, our CRA, most cities under state law have a CRA, which is the Chief Economic Development Agency of the city or the county. In many ways, they're charged with, hey, let's reinvest into businesses, let's reinvest into development. In our city, our CRA is also providing current homeowners an opportunity to repair their homes so that they can stay in them. I will be honest, it's not an easy application process, and it is very fair, it's very rigorous, but I encourage everyone to look it up. And please, please, please consider, if you live in the city of North Miami, staying in your home and not leaving and working with our city and our CRA to actually get new improvements completed in your house so that our folks can stay in place, right? Also, when it comes to ownership, we have to create more affordable avenues for ownership. It's very, very tough, especially for low and middle income families in our city and our state. But believe it or not, Miami-Dade County has it. Please go to the county's website. I wish I had an exact direct link, but there are several places where new first-time home buyers and low and middle income home buyers can apply for down payment assistance that's provided by our county. First and foremost, please, 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 floridahousing.org is a great place to go to find more resources on that. And also, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD provide below market rate interest rate loans for first-time home buyers and for low and middle income home buyers. Please, please, please Google it. If you want more info, send me an email at Evan, EVAN, at evanfornomi.com, EVANFORNOMI.com. Just send me an email. Me and my team will get to you. We'll point you in the right direction. Let's close out by talking about preservation and development. When it comes to preserving our affordable housing stock, here's the big thing. A lot of real estate guys like me, not my firm, but other firms like to find what they call value add deals, where they find an apartment complex that was built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They like to renovate, throw lipstick on a pig, renovate units, then jack up rents 5, 6, 10, sometimes upwards of 15%. That is something that we have to stop if we're going to preserve affordable housing and keep multifamily apartments that are naturally occurring as affordable, keep them affordable. One of the big things that we have to do is we have to expand our current ship and sale funding programs at the state level. Please, please, please. I don't have enough time on this call to explain everything about that, but I'll keep it high level. Ship and sale are over 20-year programs where our state legislature gives every county and city monies to invest in affordable housing development and the preservation of existing multifamily that is designated affordable. We need to increase the pie of those funds. Everybody in our state legislature knows it. I know that when I'm a councilman, I'm going to be advocating for us to do that. And I want you to do that for your local city council, state legislature, state senator, congressperson as well. Development. I'll close by saying this is one of the main pieces that I work on in our housing commission at our city. We have to bring our city, our residents, our development partners, all at the same table, first and foremost. We already know, hey, we want more affordable housing done. The way that we get that created is by making those projects that are supported by our residents, making the development process as smooth as possible for affordable and workforce housing developers. Some of the things that we're doing in our city, and I'll close by saying this, is one, for projects that have a significant amount of affordable units. We're talking 40% or more affordable units. We're helping cut bureaucracy and red tape in our planning department in getting those units developed. Two, for projects that are in or near transit, like our Miami-Dade Rapid Bus Transit System, our Brightline fast trains. For projects that are around those transit nodes that have a significant amount of affordable units. We're finding ways to cut red tape and to get those projects moved forward so we can get more affordable units done and built now. Stop making excuses. And I'll close by saying the last thing that we're doing is our city has created one of the first municipal community land trusts where we're taking publicly owned lands in the city and saying, hey, we want to put these up before our community to actually donate them for affordable housing development purposes. This is something that our housing commission has passed 2 years ago. When I'm a city councilman in a couple of months, I'm going to make sure that it's the policy that we're implementing moving forward. And so that we can take that progressive policy, show South Florida, and show the rest of the state how it's done. So thank you so much, Kwamara. Again, I went over by 2 minutes. I apologize.
Oh, good.
But thank you so much for bringing me on this incredibly important conversation today.
No, what you just said was, even though we only got those 10 minutes, those 10 minutes were so impactful, so much information. Definitely need to bring you on for just a more in-depth so we can talk about some of these things specific to Florida. In the meantime, everything that Evan mentioned is actually on the floridahousing.org website. Everything from trying to purchase your first home to the sale program to the SHIP program, understanding exactly what's going on in terms of getting the multifamily, the affordable housing, etc. The one thing that I did also want to note, and I think you mentioned this too, rents have skyrocketed. They've skyrocketed here in Miami. They've skyrocketed across the United States. And one thing that we do know is that the Biden-Harris administration has just put out a policy that has said that if you're a corporate landlord, so you're one of those corporate landlords, hedge fund landlords who is coming in and buying properties and then jacking up rental prices, you're no longer allowed to do that. You have a 5% rental increase cap if you still want to get those tax incentives that are coming from the federal government, that are coming from the local municipalities. And so the Biden-Harris administration is seeing what are the problems that we're seeing in affordable housing and are thinking about policies to help mitigate so that American and the American middle class can grow again, so that we can go back to owning our homes and owning our properties and being able to keep them, like you said, ownership, preserving the ownership in the family, in the house. Oh my God, Evan, thank you so much. You dropped a word. I so appreciate you, my brother. We gonna definitely have you back on. So, and then everyone, every speaker, I'm gonna put in show notes how you can keep in contact with them, their website, their email, all their contact information. So also feel free to just swing back to our YouTube channel or our LinkedIn, and we'll have all that information for you to keep in touch with our speakers as well. Thank you again so much, Evan. I really appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks so much, Kwamara.
Absolutely. Next up, we have my friend Andy Williams, who has done lots of extensive work nationally as it relates to housing discrimination, working for the NAACP's housing committee. So Andy, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. He's also one of our independent presidential candidates as well. So Andy, hello, good candidate. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Big K?
I'm good. And so, I wanted to bring you on because I know that you are steeped, especially from the legality standpoint, around how do people keep their housing? How do you fight discrimination that is happening in some of the, as it relates to affordable housing? So do you want to just give some high level overview around some of the work that you have done, some of the wins, and then some resources that folks can tap into?
Got you. So first of all, housing rights matter. We talk about all these matters, but we don't see a big movement around housing rights matter. I am one of the people that's been formerly incarcerated, although I never was affected by, housing discrimination based on my incarceration. I know that's a big target. You got a felon on your background. Landlords don't want to rent to you, things like that. So I'm big when it comes to the formerly incarcerated rights. But I used to be a mortgage broker, and I fought a foreclosure for 13 years. The servicer was misapplying payments, forced placing insurance, and then it created a default. From that foreclosure, I learned about the mortgage meltdown, the securitization process, pooling and services agreements. I mean, you name it, I learned it because I had the lived experience, and I actually fought the foreclosure for 13 years. And, you fight so long, you just be like, you know what, I'm tired. But I had them dead to the wrong of what they were doing. From there, I joined the NAACP, became a chairman of housing. Fast forward, I rented an apartment maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and the landlord discriminated against me and my wife, and I sued them in federal court. I didn't win yet, but I also sued with HUD, and K don't know, but they came back and ruled in my favor 2 weeks ago for a discrimination claim. So when it comes to the rights of us for housing, I feel two things. One, we always talk about Blacks build the country. Well, let's build again. If we built it before, let's build again. The second thing, we look at the model of Black Wall Street, we can build it again. And so often we're moving from the communities instead of just buying up the communities and renovating it. And now we got our own private ecosystem. So although I believe in moving into more affluent, areas, I don't believe in leaving the area I left behind. That's so often that I think happens. We want this status quo, and that's really hurting us. So if we move out of a community, we can go back and buy that community and make it right for that community. Then we bring in the education. And that's why I like the model of Black Wall Street so well. It showed people with less than what we have today doing more. And there's a little backdrop about that history with Tulsa, Oklahoma, as those lands were unincorporated and the government wanted them. That's something that I don't think never really gets talked about. And so when we come in and get this land, it should be our land, because show me a receipt where you got the land from. Like, where did you buy this land from? This is our land. I'm a big historian about the doctrine of discovery, how they just took land from our ancestors, and our generation needs to get that land back. So one of the moves around reparations for me is restitution. Give us back the land, because once we own the land, we can farm. We can raise our own livestock. We don't got to worry about what's being put in the food, because we're growing the food, and then we can network across the states with our own economic base. And that's the power that we, the people, have. But when it comes to your rights, from the Fair Housing Act to breach of contract to discrimination, 1981, I'm the guy for that. Like, my rights matter, whether it's housing, whether it's right to travel, right to be free as a formerly incarcerated, the right to bear arms, any rights that you want to talk about, my rights matter. And it comes from a lived experience platform. So it's not, I just went to some school, read a book, and then, went to join some firm and try to figure it out. I was thrown in the belly of the beast, and I came out successfully, because even when it appears like we lose, we still learn. And that way I know, the things that I would have done different had I known, but then the next person, I get to share that with me. I get to share that journey with them so they don't go through what I went through. But we, the people, we have the power. And when we discuss housing rights, it's housing rights matter. And we, people of Black and brown, we need to buy the block back, one house at a time. I'll close with this analogy. I used to sell dope, and I started out with a 16th and moved to a kilo. Now, maybe something like that's crazy, but that same business skill, that same structure that I use is how I teach other brothers. And I owned real estate before. When I owned a mortgage company, I had a 2-unit Greystone building. I used HUD to buy a couple houses, had a couple townhomes. I was in the game, And so when I'm able to share, with those other brothers that, man, you got to be educated, you got to have this, I give them an analogy where they can relate to. And that's what we, that's a teaching method that I just been gifted to be able to do. So we have the ability to buy up every single dying area across the states and rebuild a Black Wall Street that's for us, by us, because it is us.
Enzi, I love that. I love the fact that we just kind of glossed over it. So, I'm going to have to bring you back to around the incorporation of the land. And, I learned recently I was talking to someone who's from the Gullah Islands, Gullah Geechee, off of the Carolina coast. And they were talking about how land was confiscated by creating deeds. Mm-hmm. And because as indigenous folks to the land, that's not how we thought about property ownership. We didn't have a piece of paper that said we own this particular parcel. And so when the United States was forming its government, they literally just created these deeds and said that they owned the property off of just creating these deeds that we didn't have that translation. That's literally one of the methods they use to steal the land from underneath us. And so definitely want to talk a little, you talked about it in terms of incorporation of the land and saying, like, where's your actual sales receipt? What says that you actually own this? And I think This is a really, really good point. We are making the assumption that people rightfully own things without actually going back and seeing, do you actually truly rightfully own this property, or have you stolen this land from the indigenous Americans?
Stolen.
And so baby, you know we're gonna have to go in and talk about this another time. Today is not the day because we've got so many other speakers. But this is why I started here, because I want everyone to get a flavor and a highlight, and then we're gonna dig in deeper. And hopefully this starts people thinking, and you start doing your own research. Don't just listen to Andy, Evans, and the speakers and I. Go out, start Googling, start going to your local library, start learning this information. This all lives somewhere, right? Knowledge is power. These are lived experiences, but they're lived experiences off of knowing our rights and off of knowing what resources are available to us. So Andy, again, thank you so much. The Hood candidate, I will make sure we the people. I'm going to make sure that you guys have all of his information, all the information for the speakers coming up. So next we're gonna have, let me see if I have my girl Miriam. Yes, okay. So my girl Miriam is here. Boom, boom, boom. I wanted to make sure she's on because she's gonna be talking about her journey as it relates to acquiring home ownership and becoming or using real estate as an investment, as part of her investment portfolio. So Miriam, welcome, my friend. So good to see you.
So good to be here. Thank you. The speakers so far have been really insightful. As you mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about my own journey, and I wish I knew about these programs back when I was trying to buy a house. My journey started, well, I'll take it back even a little further. I was always motivated to buy a home because of the homelessness that I experienced in my youth. And so when I started doing research, the first thing I did was write a paper in college about how to buy a home. And then after that, I was just adamant. I was saving. I was changing my lifestyle habits to get this down payment. I had no idea about these programs. Like, I wish I knew about these programs. And, eventually I was able to secure my first home. It was $70,000. It was in Liberty City, Miami. And I put 3.5.
My minds want to know how long ago was this? Because you're just like, can we find something for $70,000 in Liberty City now?
No, you can't. It was in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't live in the house and kept looking because I had been approved for $320,000. Knowing well, I could not afford a $320,000 mortgage payment, but they approved me for that much. So I bought that house and started renting it out on Airbnb, and then continued to search for another house with the remainder of my qualifiable whatever that they said I would be able to purchase a home for. And then I found another house about a few blocks away from that house that was it was listed for $210,000. I made an offer full ask. And I was doing all of this myself. I didn't have a realtor. I'll tell you what, buying in Florida, I'm not trying to down realtors at all, but money flows. So they're not really on it. I'm like on it. I'm like finding the listings, calling up, setting up the showings, driving around the neighborhoods. The way I found this house was driving through the neighborhood, saw the for sale sign, got out of my car, went and walked in, and just so happened to meet the actual homeowner who was selling it. He had purchased it for $35,000. Or no, I'm sorry. The house originally sold for $35,000 to the first owner. Then that person, they lived in it their whole lives. They passed away. This developer gentleman, who happened to also be Black, he purchased the house for like $70,000, did a few months of work in it. He met me. I think I reminded him of his daughter a little bit. So out of all the offers that he got, because the housing market was crazy back then, I got the house.
Wow.
And I had gone into contract several times. This happens. You'll go into contract, things go wrong, the inspection, the appraisal, it falls out. It's very frustrating, or it can be. So then the appraisal came in for $195,000. He dropped the house by $15,000 in price, which was to me shocking. But when I think back on it, he was making a ton of money off of it. He just flipped it, right? So he was like, fine, whatever. So that was how I got that house. And having those houses changed my life. I can say that, like, when I lost my job and started working as an entrepreneur, if I didn't have those houses bringing in income for me, I would have perished. I don't know what I would have done. And just recently, I sold one of those homes, And to see that check come into my bank account, I've never seen that type of money in my life.
Wow.
I almost fainted. I was like, this is insane. Like, for real, like when she was telling me it's closing, I was refreshing every few seconds. Like, where's that money? Oh my. And when it came, I was like, this is crazy. This is life-changing money for me. I know for some people it's like, whatever, it's small pennies. But I mean, it's crazy. So I highly recommend to anyone to purchase a home, whether it's for investment or for your own use. It's just the rules to the game here in the United States. Property ownership, as far back as we go, when slaves were considered property, it is the way that this game is set up. It's a monopoly board, whatever you want to call it. That is one of the, you're sitting at a table, there's lots to eat. We're blessed to live here in the United States. If you don't own property, you're skipping salad, you're skipping the entree, you're skipping the dessert, you're skipping a part of the meal. So you got to get in the game. Whatever you have to do, cut back on your nails, cut back on your shopping, start swapping, start thrifting, start making food at home, sacrifice, be disciplined for a short amount of time so that you can experience a better life for long term. It is worth it. I used to preach this when I first got my home, but I've stopped recently, and this event that you're hosting has reinvigorated me. I really feel that this is a very important part of building up your life and becoming the best version of you and being able to be in a place where you can do all the things that you want to do with your life. Own that home, get that real estate, do it now. I don't care if the interest rate is high, it's still low compared to history and compared to other places in the world. Trust it, and it's fine. You can refinance, just get it. Do what you got to do. Especially there's free money out here. I didn't even know.
Yes. So this is so great. And actually someone asked the question, what strategies would you use to buy properties now? But before I have you answer that question, Miriam, so you didn't use any of the government funding, but you figured out how to go get your pre-qualification. That's where that $320,000 was about, was your pre-qual. And then you found a smaller piece of property, and then you found something that was comparable. So you said, I think you ended up paying, if I'm doing the math right, let's just say 190 plus 70, that's like 250. So out of that 320, you were able, instead of just thinking like, let me go get a house that's worth $300,000 or somewhere around that, you were like, I can actually get maybe a couple of properties and start monetizing based off of what the bank says. Like, what made you start thinking in those ways? Because a lot of people don't even think like that.
Yes. No, that's a very important point, because you start house shopping and you're like, I want this, I want that. No, you need to cut all that out. This is not your dream home. This is your first home. And that's the mentality that you have to have when you're going out there and shopping. At that point, with all the offers I had put in and gone through the process and gone out and this and that, and I was like, just give me a house. I'll take anything, because I knew that getting a house, that was the first step. And once you get one, you build from there. So when that house came around, that first one, 70,000, trust, it was not a nice house. This thing had problems, but it was livable. Okay. And I'm not trying to, you can't, even if you're living in a nice luxury apartment now, getting a house that's maybe not as nice is going to be better for you long term. So that is the mentality you have. This is not your dream house. This is your first house. And even now, the house that I took the money that I sold the house, and I decided I'm going to go and get another property. So I went from having that money, which I sold a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, to now I got into a 5-bedroom, 2-bath. That's worth the same amount that I got because the market goes up.
Yeah.
And I think that, so strategies, questions, strategies I use right now is pretty much the same thing. Is it going to cash flow for me? How much can I get out of this house? There's a website called rentometer.com. You can go in there, you can plug in the address, and it'll tell you the average rents that you'll get. But it's very easy to do this research yourself. Go on Craigslist, go on Facebook Marketplace, see what places are renting for. If you want to rent it, maybe you rent out some of the rooms in your house. When I lost my job, and I was starting my entrepreneurship journey and I had 2 mortgages and I was panicking, I was renting out the couch in my house on Airbnb. I don't care. $25. I live right by the airport, one night maximum stay. People would check in really late, usually they had a long layover and they'd leave in the morning and I'd change the sheets every single day. That was $25 I was getting every single day renting out that couch. Yes, they're in my space. So what? I can't watch Real Housewives in my living room? I don't care. I'm going to take that check. Okay. So you got to really humble yourself a little bit and look at the big picture and think long term.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there, and thank you for that. I have so many things that I can say, but I will also just co-sign on exactly what Miriam said. Also, as an entrepreneur and also owning real estate, there are moments when you're not cash flowing in your business, and you're like, "How am I going to pay my bills?" My rental, my rental income really has saved my life. I cannot lie. You know, I'm doing a lot of pivots in my business this year, and so really been relying on my rental income, and sectioned off a portion of my own house to rent out like a pseudo room as well. So I'm doing the same thing. Thinking about the different ways that we can monetize our properties, and my girl Keisha is going to really go into that in a couple of speakers down. Deontay, are you ready? Because this is a perfect layup for you, Deontay. Miriam just talked about Airbnb. My boy Deontay got Vibes. I just want to make sure that he's on here and ready to go. So give me a thumbs up. If not, then I'll switch over to Keisha, and then we could swing back to Deontay. Miriam, thank you. I definitely want to go more into your story. I did not know that you were homeless growing up in your childhood. So we'll definitely need to chit chat about that as well. So that is great. Deontay says he's ready. Thank you so much, Miriam. I appreciate you. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up Deontay and remove Miriam. Thanks so much, girl. Oh, Deontay, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Boom.
How you doing?
Awesome. Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for inviting
Awesome.
me.
Yes, of course, of course. Well, because you have a business that's around helping people monetize the real estate that they own and or rent or manage. Miriam talked about her first property, Airbnb-ing it. And so I was like, this is a perfect layup for Deontay, who's the founder of Vibes B&B. So Deontay, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Vibes B&B and then how people can monetize their properties on your platform.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to the lady's story because I could find some similarity where I had definitely followed along a path that was similar to hers. Mine was a little different though. Just to give some insight, my name is Dion, right? So I'm from Detroit, Michigan, right? Inner city Detroit kid. Came down here to Florida in 2011, graduated from FIU and Eastern Michigan. And I got into housing, right, in 2016, right? I couldn't afford a house, right? So my idea was if I can't afford a house, then I might as well rent, right? I ended up renting a 2-bedroom apartment that I ended up finding a roommate for, but he liked to sleep on 60 degrees every day, and I just couldn't stand having a roommate, right? So naturally, when he finally left after about 5 or 6 months, I was doing Uber and Airbnb, Uber and Lyft at this time, and I ended up running into a lady from the Edison Hotel on South Beach, and I had asked her how could she afford to stay in that hotel. And she was like, "Oh, I'm on Airbnb." So I'm like, oh, "Okay, that sounds cool." I had looked it up. I had just stored it, and I was like, "Oh, this is like real estate, property rental stuff." Okay, I mean, I don't have a property right now, so I just stored it for later. So comes later, my roommate leaves, and I'm like, "Man, I don't really know how I'm gonna afford like paying the full rent there, right?" And then it had thought to me, okay, I remember this lady told me about Airbnb. You could list like your property and stuff. So I went to go look at it, and then I had saw that they had allowed room rentals to be listed on Airbnb. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I ended up listing my the room, and this was on a room sharing model, right? I was technically doing arbitrage with the landlord there because he had allowed me to rent the room out. So I kind of thought of it as like that, rental arbitrage. You get permission from the owner to do, uh, be able to list your room so that you can earn money to be able to pay the rent, right? Landlords just want to be paid their money. That's really all it comes down to. I ended up doing that, and then to my surprise, I ended up earning like almost double the amount of rent I was receiving from the the roommate that I had, and it had instantly like dawned to me that Airbnb was new in Florida, and if it was having this much impact, and you could earn this much money in a 30-day period, I was like, man, this is kind of the start of something that's not a whole lot of people know about, and I just happened to learn about it from an Uber ride, like me just driving Uber, picking somebody up. So that was the first chance I got a chance to kind of dive into housing and think about doing something on an entrepreneurial type of vibe, to the point where, I ended up getting creative with my Airbnb description, and I ended up putting like to what is now Vibes B&B. Just I ended up creating a booking platform called Vibes B&B that allows people to upload cannabis friendly listings, because what I noticed is when I was doing my Airbnb location, um, the people who started to come to me when I first was doing Airbnb, they were all complaining about getting kicked out for having cannabis or smoking or doing things that were that the host didn't like on Airbnb because it was so new in 2016. So what I ended up noticing was when I put that description in my listing, I ended up going 90% booked for almost 2 years straight. And it blew my mind because I had found something that not a lot of people were doing and that was consistent for me, to where I was able to create a 10-year career out of that, just from that one little thing that I did. So
And I just want
now,
to, can I go, Dion, real quick? I just want to be clear. In that 10-year period, this is off of a property that you were renting. So this
right,
wasn't a property that you own. I wanted it because everyone is like, oh, I don't own a property. How can I monetize a property I don't own? Well, here's a way that you can. So I wanted to make sure that we're clear that this is a rental property, and then you built it out for those 2 years, and it was still a rental property platform.
right.
Yeah.
So when I remember the rental arbitrage, right? So I rented a property that someone owned already, right? And I had gotten to an agreement with him to be able to list the property on Airbnb, to be able to do, earn passive income like that. And then to my surprise, just Airbnb ended up being, a really good income generator at that time. So I took that path and realized rental arbitrage was a path that you could take in housing, right? It's just kind of, being an ancillary part to the investment process, I like to call it, right? But what I was able to do was, after doing that, I was able to earn enough money to be able to, at least be able to go to other owners and show enough income that I was making through these properties to where they would sign their properties onto me, to where I had ended up getting to now over 150 properties that are just within my network, that I'm able to build a service. Vibes B&B is the service, the digital service that I created through that journey of mine, to where now I offer cannabis friendly listings to people in the state of Florida that are looking to find like an affordable, but also, specific type of stay. So I cater to that audience, but doing it with a housing background that I had used to grow to where I am today. So that's why I was saying the other lady's story was interesting, because she bought a house, put it on Airbnb, but for me, I couldn't afford to buy one. So, if you can't buy the building, stock the shelf, right? So I went ahead and just partnered up with somebody who had bought it, and then wanted to kind of explore strategies to be able to monetize, an investment property. And I thought that was an interesting way to get into real estate, but not really be a real estate agent. but be kind of in the services part of the industry. So,
I love that.
yeah.
And then Dion, Vibes NB, I know you obviously out of South Florida. Are you allowed to operate outside of Florida? So just want to make sure this is going out live to people all across the United States. So can
Right.
other people outside the United States get onto the platform as well?
Okay, so yeah, now that I'm done talking about that, we can go into the juicy stuff. So, 2019, when I moved to Miami, I ended up getting a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, to which I was able to create the service Vibes B&B, right? Vibes B&B is a cannabis-friendly hospitality marketplace where vacation rentals can list their properties to our to our marketplace, to where you can offer cannabis tourism experiences here in the state of Florida. We're in November, they're getting ready to legalize recreational cannabis, so we want people to be able to list their properties that want to use it as a passive income opportunity, in addition to VRBO and Airbnb and some of the other marketplaces out there. We're an additional marketplace for people who want to get into the wellness experience curation department, right? So if you want to turn your house into an experience where you're accepting of cannabis users or tourism users, then you can sign your property up to us. You are allowed to do it in other states, right? Recreational states that already have policies there. There's people already getting into this market, and Florida is getting ready to tap into that this November. So I'm in a special reality right now where we're 60 days before really the market starts to open up for us. So it just gives property owners and listing agents and real estate agents additional options for their portfolios when they start to talk about what to do after you buy the house, right? So I am a marketplace to where you can list your property to be able to create, different experiences with your home. Florida has the highest vacation rental infrastructure in the United States. So, Orlando, Kissimmee, Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami, of course, the beaches, everybody visits Florida. So I'm an additional marketplace for travel. And if you want to get into the tourism and hospitality industry, you can contact us to where we're creating a wait list. We're relaunching some things right now, but we're getting into the space to where we want to not impact neighborhoods the way that Airbnb has, but more follow a more legal and accessible route where we're zoned for short-term rental activities, so that we can empower our neighborhoods and not contribute to the problem. I know B&Bs are critical for getting into neighborhoods and causing havoc, but we're more smaller and personal, right? I always tell my teammates, we don't have to be a $1 billion company. 1 million is fine for me. So I want to be small and discreet and work with a certain amount of owners that really want to be an early adopter of Vibes B&B, but also curate a environment that is safe and inclusive in Miami and accessible. So those are some of the things that we're doing in the housing space. It's really, like I said, it's empowering people to turn their properties into investment properties and then able to create a monetizable strategy out of that.
Thank you so much, Dion. Appreciate it. We do have a couple more speakers to go to, but I love the fact that you're being intentional, that you're empowering communities, and that you want to make sure that we are safe, legalized, and the ways that we're doing it stays above the law, and it's really a community asset instead of a community deterrent. So I love that. So thank you so much, Dion. I appreciate you, my brother, coming on. And then I'll have all of his contact information, just like all the other speakers, in our show notes after we close out. So thank you so much, my brother. I'm gonna bring on Keisha, who's gonna be talking about all the different ways that you can definitely monetize your property as well. Peace out.
All right. See you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hit me up.
All right, I don't know how to do this.
Hey, I think you're on.
Okay, good. I'm on.
I got you.
Do I need to click something? Does she just bring
No, I do. I'm doing it all. Oh my
nice.
God.
I was trying to go. I'm going live too while I've been talking live, sharing what everybody is talking about on here.
Oh man, that's dope. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So, I've been in the real estate game for a little bit, and when I heard you speak at the mastermind, however many months ago that was, you blew my mind, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, sis, I need to learn more. We need to get you more out on the platform. And so we'd love to talk a little bit about your story, how you got into it. I know that you somewhat started using Airbnb as well.
Mhm.
And then some of the philosophies and the strategies that you're using around thinking about monetizing your home.
Yeah. So, thank you for having me for sure. I love to get to talk about this concept. It's definitely not one that a lot of people know about or have really thought about or explored, but it's one I've been using for years now. And the last two speakers really were a great segue for me. Because so a little background about me. My name is Keisha. I'm a South Florida native, so born and raised in Broward County. Graduated from Deerfield Beach High School. I went to University of Florida, so I'm a Florida girl through and through, kind of a unicorn is that what I call myself, because a lot of people, at least in this area that I am in, like the downtown Brickell area, a lot of people are not from here, so I don't get to meet a lot of natives all the time. But when I came back, I went to Chicago for grad school. When I came back here, I was really interested in entrepreneurship. I knew I wanted to find a way into entrepreneurship. This was about 2016. And I think it seems like that's around the time a lot of us started hearing about Airbnb, at least the early, I would call us early adapters for the Airbnb models that we were using. So like the previous young lady, I wasn't able to buy a home. So like Dion, I couldn't buy a home at that time, but I had started hearing about rental arbitrage, and I'm like, okay, I could probably get an apartment though. I know I could do that. So that's how I got my start into the short-term rental space. I use the rental arbitrage method, which I got permission from the landlord to use it for business purposes. And so I scaled that up to a 6-figure business over those next few years. I ended up with about 4 units right in the Alapata area of Miami, so near the hospital health district. I catered to medical travelers and business professionals. As time went on, pandemic happened. I ended up closing the Airbnb because for several reasons, but I still had a lease, right? Like you don't just get to get out the lease because things aren't going right in your business. I'm like, this landlord still wants his money. How am I going to give it to him? So I thought, well, maybe people need it for photo shoots or making a music video or something like that. I found a platform called Peerspace. I listed it on there. I moved into the Airbnb. I moved out of my place. I'm like, I can't afford all these rents. So I moved in, but I'm like, okay, I can still let people come here when I'm not here during the daytime and take pictures or make a music video or whatever they want to do. So I listed it and it worked. People actually used that platform. So I got the proof of concept, and that's all I really needed, proof of concept, right? I knew I wanted to live somewhere else. I knew I wanted to open my Airbnbs back. And so now that I understood how the concept worked, that people actually needed spaces to create content, they wanted some space to do a photo shoot or a video shoot, and it doesn't have to be a fancy space. Remember, I said I was in Alapata, which I don't know if you all are familiar. Alapata is changing now, but 2020, 2019, it was not, there were no high rises and things like that over in Alapata, so it wasn't the most glamorous space, but it worked for people's projects. And it worked well for them. I leveraged that into getting a different space, a bigger, or I guess you can say better space in Brickell. So that is where I currently am, in my apartment in Brickell. And I use this apartment as a content studio. So people can rent this space for me on an hourly basis for photo shoots, video shoots, podcasts, workshops, all type of things. But this is just the avenue to create extra income because I do have another business, right? And so everybody is not going to be able to manage Airbnbs. Airbnb is a process. Maybe they can't buy a house for Airbnb. They don't really know how to rent several and many apartments for Airbnb, but you live somewhere or you work somewhere. You can leverage your own personal spaces that you have access to. You can list those spaces on different platforms and people will use them for whatever project they need. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to be in your home. It can be, I'm working with someone right now. He wants to use his pool area in his backyard. He has a great pool area. It's a barbecue back there. It's kind of like a Zen garden. So we're going to get his backyard listed on Peerspace for him to rent out hourly, like $50 to $60 an hour for people to come. and use his backyard for, they can do events back there if they want, but they can also do photo shoots or video shoots. He even has a little space where he just let people have like meetings. So you can leverage spaces that you have access to create that extra income to do different things like have a down payment for a home or offset some of your housing expenses and housing costs. You know, it doesn't have to be something you do every day. You choose when you do it, especially when it's just to create extra income. You can choose how much you want to make. So that's why I really love this model, because anyone can do it. It doesn't need anything fancy. It's not a lot of startup costs. If you're using a space you already have, there quite literally is no startup cost. You already live there. You already work there. So you are just taking a space, taking some nice pictures, and letting people have access to it. And it works very well with people's schedule as far as work or having your own business, because you're not home anyway. So why not make some money from it? So yeah, it's a concept that I really enjoy. And it's I would say the lowest barriers to entry in this model. Don't overthink it. I tell people don't overthink it. Don't think I'm not in anything fancy. I'm not in Brickell. You don't have to be. Once I started worked at Allapattah in a 560 square foot apartment, I was like, okay, well, this can work anywhere. You just never know what people need something for. I tell people all the time, think about when you're watching commercials on TV or watching a movie. They are not, majority of the time, they are in a very regular looking place. When you're watching something on TV or you're watching a commercial, it is not the fancy, luxurious spaces that you see often when you're watching a movie or a television show. And these spaces that you see them in, these are not always movie sets. These are someone's real live apartment or home that they rented to create this movie or commercial or music video. And that could be you. It's just a matter of getting on these platforms that already facilitate these people finding you and you letting them come in and use your space.
Man, Keisha, I love that. And I love the fact that it's a very low barrier to entry. And it's just a matter of just saying, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how to monetize, where I wanted to monetize. You can make sure that your bedroom is not a part of that. If you're worried about your personal space, think about ways that you can set up the apartment or your home so that there's still a sense of privacy and then things going out to the public. Can you just talk, because one of the things that I enjoyed, and then we're going to go on to our last speaker, about the monetization around how was actually you realized making a little bit more money than Airbnb or even doing a short-term rental. Can you just talk a little bit about that? The hourly rate of it actually gives you a higher income return.
Yes, I can. But also I will throw in there, just like the other young lady said, how she was renting out her sofa. You can't be so attached. Like when you have a goal and you have something you're trying to get to, you do have to take the personal attachment out of it. And just have the bigger vision and the bigger goal in mind. And the same thing goes with even when you're using a space that you're comfortable with. Like the gentleman, he's going to be using his backyard, right? People are not going to be in his house, but he still has to detach himself so much emotionally, right? These are not your friends and family coming over. So they're not going to destroy your space, but they're not going to have as much respect for your space as a friend or family would. But he has a financial goal that he's leveraging this space to get to. So you do have to treat it like a business and have that business mindset behind it. But you do get to choose where people get to go. As far as the hourly rate versus a nightly rate, that's another reason I love this model over my Airbnbs. I no longer have the Airbnbs, by the way. I did close them at the end of last year. But this model of hourly rate rental is just a higher return. For my Airbnbs, I think I was renting them in the low season. I was renting them for like $75 a night. This space, I rent this space for $75 an hour. So the return is way bigger and no one's ever here overnight. It's way less cleaning to do. I don't have to pay cleaners. Sometimes I will, like when I want to do a good deep cleaning of the space, but you're working with professionals when you use your space for content, studios type activities. You're working with professionals. They're just coming to film something, to record something. They're not looking to, be cooking, but you can let people use your space for that too. But what I'm saying is it's just way less wear and tear. So it's less expenses to turn over, and the hourly rate is such a higher return than a nightly rate. Of course, Airbnb does have its advantages as well, but for me, this model just I did Airbnb for 4 years, and I've done this for 3, and I feel like for me this model is just more favorable as far as stress levels and maintenance expenses. I prefer this model over the Airbnb model because I've done both.
Oh man, Keisha, thank you so much. You're always dropping the wisdom. I'm always learning something extra from you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Founder of 529 Miami. And so, like I said before, you'll get all of the contact information for our speakers after the show is over. I'll put it in the show notes. But thank you again so much, sis, for blessing us with your wisdom. I appreciate you, my sister.
Thank you.
All righty. And so now I'm going to bring on our last speaker, which is Mr. Harold Ford, my newfound friend, my newfound brother over here. We spent some time getting to know each other at the NAACP convention. And so it's been amazing getting to know you, getting to know some of your thoughts around home ownership. I remember when I was doing the Housing for All campaign, and Mr. Harold said to me, he said, I hope you're really talking about home ownership, because I don't want to always talk about affordable housing. I really want to talk about how we're going to own things and how important it is to own things. So why don't you talk a little bit about the work that you do at the NAACP, and then also your philosophies and thoughts around what's going on with the housing market here in South Florida, and what are the ways that we can really start promoting home ownership here in South Florida?
Well, first of all, thank God for the opportunity to just come and share with the people. And as you know, I'm always about empowerment. And through the NAACP, we're about economic development and economic empowerment. That's the primary focus of what we do, whether it's trying to get your rights restored or whether it's basically just advocating simply for education. So through those various means, we try to do what we can to help people become a better version of themselves throughout their journey. And when it comes to housing, from the first speaker who talked about affordable housing, workforce housing, and a few other those pieces, I challenge us to really take on the affordable home ownership model. And we may be the ones that have to create what that looks like, because at the end of the day, and I can show you how this works on our behalf, even as homeowners. For example, there's about 400,000 rental units in Miami-Dade County. And this is data from a few years ago. If half of those units were owned and not rented, you got approximately, just in tax dollars, or our tax base grows by $1 billion a year.
Wow.
That sustains us and provides additional services. So that's one of the reasons why. Not only that, but when we look at affordable housing, that is a vacuum, that is a black hole that continues to grow the more units go online. So are we trying to reduce the subsidy, or are we trying to grow the subsidy? Because if we're growing the subsidy, we're empowering fewer people. So that's why I need us to pivot and understand what the real purpose of home ownership can do for us as taxpayers. And now, if we want lower taxes, guess what? If you got more people owning, you will end up having lower taxes down the road. Again, this is a forward-thinking process and model that we definitely need to adopt and consider. Just to give you a quick story, I was fortunate to be at the right place at the right time, knowing the right person. And I received a call, and this was during COVID, where a friend of a friend was in a situation where they needed to sell a property that was left to them. They had multiple properties, but they needed to sell a property that was left to them. They couldn't use the property. It had been used for years and years and years as a rooming house, but it had become so dilapidated that it was unlivable. And in approaching that particular opportunity, I want to encourage people, forget about what it looks like at that moment. Don't get caught up in what you see at that moment. You got to have a vision and what you want to see on the other side of that. And so I encourage people, if you want to look at that type of situation, find out what the value of the property is at that time. And then with the upgrades or the improvements, what the value is on the other side of that. And based on what it's going to cost to get you there, you can decide if it's going to be a workable or tenable situation for me. And for me, it worked out because, at the end of that particular transaction, it was a nice piece of change to get and receive. But more importantly, I also learned I could have actually put additional value to it if I had made one slight change. Instead of making it a single family home at the end of that, I could have made it a duplex,
Right.
which would have added probably another 6 figures to the value, and if I had wanted to live in one of the units,
Right.
I could have gone through FHA programming. And then that particular renter on the other side would have been paying for that mortgage for me.
That's right.
So it's a lesson learned. But guess what? I tell people lessons can cost you one way or another. It could be free or it can be very costly. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful for just for the lesson that was learned. So now I know how to guide and help others in that process, and knowing how they could use FHA, USDA, and some of these other programs that are out there. And I know that's not where we want to go at the moment, but utilizing those programs to try to help you get to where you want to go in your journey. But looking at this whole idea of housing, like I said, I'm all about affordable home ownership because I want to give people an economic floor that they can build on. When we talk about creating generational wealth, but we're not really teaching people how to get there. Because you need to teach people what it means to own and how to own and the responsibilities behind ownership. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. No. All of those things are correct. And let me say that I'm very home ownership forward. But I also say if we're not quite there yet, what are the other ways that we can monetize? So I want to make sure that I'm hitting everybody. But we are 100% trying to get to where we are the majority home ownership. We have less of a rental mindset and more of an ownership mindset. I mean, this is true all around the board. When I think about annually, the Black dollar is worth $1.3 trillion. Okay. But because we're a consumer culture, meaning that we buy, and we're not a producer culture, more like owning the products themselves, we take that money, we send it out all the time. And as we know, the statistic is in the Black community, the dollar does not even circulate more than one time. It doesn't even last more than 6 hours within the Black community, meaning that as soon as we get our money, we're off sending it off to somebody else and spending it. Right. And so we start shifting our mindset and we start thinking about how do we invest back into our community? How do we invest back in through homeownership? How do we start changing our mindset? And we realize that we actually are a powerful people, right? There's a reason why most marketing is targeted towards Black folk and Black culture and use Black culture to market. It's because we're $1.3 trillion annually. That's a lot of money. So when we realize that we can turn that money inward and we start creating these economies, these cooperative economics, and based off of and rooted in owning the block, owning the homes, owning the commercial real estate, owning the multi-family properties. And while people are trying to build some of that income to get to a place where they can own, here are some other ways you can actually monetize the things that you have already in your possession. So again, just thinking about what are the ways that I can make my money work for me instead of having that money go to other folks. So you and I are 100% on the same page. Amen. And let's talk a little bit about the FHA program, because my first property is an FHA mortgage to this day still, because it's a 30-year mortgage. So still have it underneath the FHA. So let's talk about that. That is federal money that allows you to get secured government loan funding program that usually has a lower interest rate, a lower barrier to entry, has less requirements than traditional financing going through a bank. And it also allows for less down payment. 3.5%, I think, is usually the criteria. And it usually has to be owner occupied for a number of years, 3 years, 4 years, or something like that. I can't remember what the exact criteria is there, and it might have changed since the last time I did the FHA. But yeah, talk about a little bit more about the FHA and some of the other federal programs that are helping people acquire property.
Well, I mean, when you look at the FHA or any government program for that matter, I think one of the hidden gems behind those programs is the inspection requirements. Because they're going to make sure when you get into whatever you're getting into, and if they're backing it in any way, shape, or form, which FHA is really just a guarantee to the lender that, hey, if something happens, we're going to make sure we back this loan. but the inspections themselves require, and the requirements to make sure everything is in order before you move in as the buyer, are that those are those hidden nuggets that really need to give more attention and more credence to. Because again, at the end of the day, people will sell you a lemon,
Yes, they
and you
will.
won't even know it until about 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, when stuff starts breaking, pipes start acting funny, electricity starts, going awry, and you've gotten yourself into a situation where it's going to cost you even more to try to get it fixed or repaired. And when you look at it, USDA has a number of loan programs. I suggest you use that powerful tool you got in the palm of your hand called a cell phone. Do a few searches. When you look at these programs, some of them are 0 down payment. If you have someone that's attached to the military, use that GI Bill. Partner with them if they are interested in doing business. Say, hey, let's you use your bill, I use my resources. Let's get these properties, and let's both benefit and be blessed from it. So I think sometimes we need to also look at potential for partnerships, strategic partnerships, in others that may have certain options and opportunities that you or I may not have standing alone. And I think if we also approach that from that perspective, we empower ourselves even more. I know you want to say.
And then again, that's the power of us coming together collaboratively, forming these partnerships, using our resources, right? If we come together as a community, the power of what we can do, which is why, I mean, we can go all the way back to when we were brought here as slaves in the ways that the colonizer made sure that we were separate, right? We didn't speak the same language. We had a hierarchy. We had the house Negro and the field Negro. How we continue to perpetrate some of those divisions, right? When we think, I love the Divine Nine, but when you think about how you could get into the Divine Nine historically, you had to go past the paper brown bag test. I bring that all up to say that they understand that if we actually come together and we understood the power of us coming together as a community, what we could actually do. Look at what we've done, and we haven't actually come together as a whole holistic African Caribbean diasporic community and really come together as an economy. Imagine if we can figure out how to do that. If we could put our differences aside and say, for the greater good, for the betterment of truly of our community, think about what we can do as a powerful. So I love the fact that you said that. Look at your brother, look at your friend, look at your partner, look at your best friend. Can you guys come together and purchase a property, purchase a multifamily? One of the things, the last time I saw you, we talked and you blew my mind around this, which was around how you could use Section 8 or basically rental income government funding to actually purchase a property. So can you talk just a little bit about that? And then I went and looked it up afterwards because I was like, let me make sure. I was on the FloridaHousing.org. Let me put that up. I was on the FloridaHousing.org website. I was like, my brother is talking about it. It's also talked about on HUD.gov. Like it is here, y'all. So you can find, if you think that we are bullshit, I'm telling you exactly all the places that you can go find this information. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, basically, it allows you. There's certain restrictions, obviously, but it allows you. It'll pay your, I think, up to 15 years. If you have a 30-year mortgage, it'll pay up to 15 years of your mortgage. A Section 8 voucher. But again, you got to make sure you have the right mindset going in and making sure you are planned for the other end of that. If you're doing a 30-year mortgage, or if you're able to pay the difference on a 15-year mortgage, so that when that stops, you're done and you can actually move forward in that whole ownership space. But again, looking at these tools and doing more research in these spaces is what's going to really empower us to really not just buy the block, but build the block once we buy it back. Because if we don't build it after we buy it, then the values aren't going to go up. And we can, and I heard, I think my brother mentioned, or one of my brothers mentioned earlier about moving into affluent areas, but not forgetting where we came from. But I think also we can build our own affluent areas and build those things that we want to see and how we want to enjoy what we want community to look like and feel like. Because I guarantee you, if you gave us all 40 acres, we decide to go in a certain region of this country and pool those 40 acres together, make them all connected, God only knows what we'd be able to build. And more importantly, who would actually be trying to move where we are instead of moving us out of the way. But in either case, like I said, there are a number of programs out there, federal, state, and local, that will help us in this whole home buying process. I know even here in Miami-Dade County, MDEET, Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust, they have programs to help with down payment assistance and things of that nature to help you get into your home. But again, we got to make this opportunity more affordable. And if you know people with vacant lots and vacant land, listen, you have potentially something that can do the work for you. You just have to be in the right space with the right people at the right time to make it happen. And I guarantee you, once you do that, you'll see, really, really how your whole lifestyle, as my sister, my fellow Gator sister was just talking, your whole lifestyle will change behind all of that. So.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Ford. I appreciate you always, all the wisdom that you bring forth. And when we're talking, and actually all the speakers, I learned so much from the moment we started until now.
Yes.
And I can't wait for us to continue to dive in, to dig deeper. I was just telling everyone on the call, I think I'm going to do this on a weekly basis. I think that this information is so important. Knowledge is truly power. You don't know what you don't know. But the other thing is trust but verify. I'm going to put all these websites in. You're going to be able to contact all of the speakers. You can talk to them directly. Everybody's accessible. This knowledge is out there, and we have to be able to share these resources and see what's actually out there, and not just listen to echo chambers, and not necessarily to naysayers. There are ways for us to bring back the Black middle class, to bring back our communities, to buy our blocks back, and to your point, Brother Ford, to building the communities that we want in the future, for the future, as we're considering our legacy building, our legacy, not just our progeny legacy, but the legacy that we leave for our community. And what have we put down in our foundation that's sustainable, impactful, and long lasting. And so just want to give it up to you again, Brother Ford, who is also the president of the South Dade branch of the NAACP and the 5th VP of the NAACP Florida State Conference of Branches. So we've got our brother here who's doing amazing stuff. I will make sure in the show notes, there's ways for you to keep in contact with all of our speakers, some of which might come back throughout this series. I want to thank everyone who has joined us live. If you enjoyed the resources, please share the videos. They're on YouTube, they're on LinkedIn. We know some people have been doing their Instagram lives from here, so that's been amazing. I've really appreciated all the commentary that I'm seeing, and I'm glad that you all appreciate that too. This is a labor of love. So if you want to join the Housing for All campaign, we're always looking for volunteers, donations, and there's also a way to donate directly to the Kamala Harris campaign fund if that is the way that you are swinging. But basically, housing is a bipartisan issue. Everybody has the right to safe, secure housing, period. And so that is what we are going to make sure that we do. And then especially for us, that we own our communities. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please sign up at the housingforallcampaign.org so you know what our next events are. And we really appreciate everyone coming on. Again, thank you so much, Evan, Andy, Brother Ford, Sister Miriam, Sister Keisha, Brother Deontay. You guys drop new jewels, knowledge, and wisdom. We can all learn from all of your lived experiences, and I appreciate you all taking the time. Peace.
God bless.